Questions orales.
Oral questions. Questions orales. The Honourable Andrew Scheer.
Has lost control of spending and his cabinet, and the fiscal feud over the $40 billion guardrail is worse than we ever thought. New reports show that the Prime Minister is set to replace Canada's first female finance minister with his old boys network pal, Carbon Tax Carney. And Canadians are on the bus watching in terror as the Prime Minister is yanking her out of the driver's seat so that Carney can send us smashing through the guardrail and over the cliff. Does the finance minister still have her hands on the wheel, and will the deficit be below that $40 billion guardrail?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted that the first question from the Conservatives relates to the economy and the finance minister. Let's talk about the work she's been doing on behalf of Canadians. Yesterday,
Bro, she's about to get fired.
50 basis point interest rate
Right out the gate.
by the Bank of Canada. That was the 5th time in a row, leading the entire G7, we've seen the interest rates come down from the Bank of Canada. On Saturday, we have a further great news for details for Canadians, which is a GST tax cut on basic essentials for every Canadian from coast to coast to coast. That's groceries, that's things that you buy for your kids for Christmas. That's great news for Canadians under the leadership of this finance minister.
Dude, Freeland's done. First female minister to get fired.
Even the bank admitted that they had to cut rates because the economy is performing so poorly under this NDP Liberal Prime Minister. And, you know, Canada's phantom finance minister has been pulling the strings for a while. Carbon Tax Carney has been forcing radical new spending and forcing the finance minister to smash through a $40 billion guardrail. And now that Canadians are fed up and angry, the Prime Minister is going to blame her, dump her, and replace her with Carney. A classic example of an incompetent boss blaming subordinates. Does the finance minister not realize that she's about to join a long list of cabinet ministers that have had their careers and their reputations ruined by this prime minister?
There you go. Put some W's down in the chat.
An Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I'm equally delighted that he's talking about the Bank of Canada, because what has the actual Bank of Canada governor said recently? He said, quote, CPI inflation has been about 2% since the summer, and we expect it to be close to target on average over the next couple of years. On inflation, what has Tiff Macklamachi said? Quote, we are no longer trying to get inflation down. Government spending is not pushing against us getting inflation down. We have brought it down. That's the handiwork of this finance minister and this government, generating economic growth and being prudent with fiscal management. That's about inflation being on target 11 straight months, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
If he just read a little further, he'd read that it's not because of anything the government's been doing except causing our economy to slow down and underperform. That's why they've taken this step. But you know, a guardrail is something you're supposed to stay far away from. If you even brush up against it, it's a sign you're way off track. If you smash through it, you go flying off a cliff. Now, even Liberal MPs are terrified and are ringing the bell, trying to get off before they smash through the guardrail. One of them said, quote, I think that if we state that we have a $40 billion guardrail, we better stay within those numbers. And another is begging for a fiscally responsible framework. Will the Prime Minister allow a free vote, or will he force his Liberal MPs to stay on that bus as it goes?
Andrew Scheer doing Andrew Scheer things.
Speaker, allow me to reference not just what the domestic Bank of Canada is talking about, but let's talk about what the IMF is stating. The IMF is projecting that Canada will have the strongest economic growth in the G7 on average in 2023 and 2024. Canada is expected to maintain its position as the country with the smallest deficit as a share of GDP among G7 countries, and still by far the lowest general government net debt as a share of GDP in the G7. What's up, Mr. Speaker? Canada's growth and leadership of the G7.
Nah,
that's what's up,
dude.
and we're proud of it.
This fake feminist prime minister is determined to decimate Canadians' lives by destroying the economy, and he will throw anyone under the bus to do it, including his token finance female minister. Canadians know he's weak. They know he's lost control of his cabinet and his spending. The question is, will the first ever female finance minister have the courage to stand up to that fake feminist prime minister and stick to her promised $40 billion deficit?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, here's something tangible that the Leader of the Opposition could do. In the next election, he could run more women, and he could get more women in those seats. If he really wants to prove...
Bro, it's based off of merit.
In terms of standing up for women, let me just give you some stats, Mr. Speaker.
No. Drop an L. Drop an L. She sounds stupid.
9% of the women elected sit here in the Liberal benches. How many in the Conservative benches, Mr. Speaker? 6%.
No, it's based on merit. It's based on merit. It's based on merit, you bunch of horse crap.
Order.
You don't get a job because of your gender.
Order.
That's not how that works. We don't do diversity quotas.
I want to hear the question from the honourable member.
No wonder the Liberals suck.
The honourable member from Peterborough Kawartha.
Mr. Speaker, on the Conservative side of the House, women stand here because we're skilled and we're allowed to use our voice.
Woo! Mic drop! Yeah!
Mr. Speaker, Jody Wilson-Raybould is testament to this. That is a fake Prime Minister, but that is not the point. We're not here to talk about gender. We're here to talk about the economy, and it's destroyed under that fake feminist Prime Minister. So again, if she is not a token, will she stand up to him and say, no, I will abide by my $40 billion deficit guardrail to help this economy get back on track and save Canadians' lives?
There you go. Let's see what you got to say to that.
Know that all members are keen to return back to their constituencies for the Christmas break. But until that point, please, let us treat each other with respect. And that means letting...
Shut the hell up, Speaker. Let them talk.
Standing, or when someone...
Yeah, put some drop mics. Put some mics down in the chat.
The Honourable Minister for Crown Indigenous Services.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that woman might feel like a token, but I never do. I earned my seat in this House of Commons.
Yeah, based off a quota, it sounds like.
And you know why they don't like numbers, Mr. Speaker? Because the numbers don't speak in their favor. There are 30% of these seats taken by women, Mr. Speaker. Fully 17% of those are here over on this side. More than half of the women elected are Liberals, Mr. Speaker, and the other half are the rest of the parties combined. So they should do their job, Mr. Speaker, as parties and get more women to run.
Dude, it's based off of merit, not a quota. It's not hard to understand.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has lost control over spending and his ministers. The Minister for Finance promised to limit the deficit to $40 billion, but the Prime Minister pushed her to spend more. The Prime Minister, a fake feminist, by the way, can he finally admit that he's already replaced the first female finance minister with Mark Carney, an unelected man who is already pulling the strings behind the scenes? Order.
Oh, they're going crazy in the House.
Minister for Innovation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have no lessons to learn from the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker. With regards to the economy, Canadians have seen the work put forward by the Liberal government. A key interest rate at 3.25%, Mr. Speaker. A key interest rate that will help families, that will help SMEs, that will help our business people. Soon, there will be a GST vacation. It's Christmas time. I know the Conservatives. I'm sure they have a good heart. Let's celebrate Canadians and our entrepreneurs, and let us celebrate this reduction in the key interest rate. The Honourable Member for Mistersunshinebaby. Mr. Speaker, now we've seen it all. An incompetent Prime Minister who is pushing his Finance Minister to run up a staggering $40 billion deficit. And now he's blaming her for his failure and is replacing her with an unelected man. And all the while, he struts around equal voice, claiming to be a proud feminist. What hypocrisy! Will the Prime Minister finally admit that his minister is a mere facade now, because he is forcing her to break her promise to respect a $40 billion deficit ceiling?
Hello.
All right.
Order, please. Order.
Yeah, so right before the holidays, before they take a break, things get rowdy in the House.
Honourable
You're going to want to pay
Minister for
attention
Fisheries and
fully
Oceans
to
and
this
Coast
one.
Guards. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I see that they've learned their lessons across the way. I don't have to repeat myself, but we have a member.
Did she
of the
get those
opposition,
glasses out of a
Conservative,
frickin'
woman who
cereal
comes from
box?
Quebec. How can that kind of person attack our Minister of Finance, who has implemented the Canadian childcare benefit? I hate to interrupt questions. I hate to interrupt answers.
No, you don't. You love it.
The member for Louis Saint Laurent and the member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier to please not order on both sides. Minister.
He's going to snap today. I feel
will
it.
ask the Minister for Fisheries and Oceans and Coast Guards to start from the top. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, whose unhinged
Those
grandma is
men on the
this?
other side who are heckling, doesn't bother me at all, Mr. Speaker. Women are the ones who tackle men head on. And
There's a joke there.
shame on the opposition. Because we have a woman from Quebec, a colleague, and she dares attack our Minister for Finance, who has implemented programs like the Canadian childcare benefit, programs that help women when it comes to childcare, Mr. Speaker. We've implemented programs to help children.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Normally, it is here in this House that important votes should take place, but today it's happening in the Senate. Senators will vote upon an amendment that would sabotage C-282 and prevent it from protecting supply management. The non-elected senators will be voting whether or not to respect the desire of elected representatives from all parties to protect our farmers in trade agreements. Has the Prime Minister contacted each of his Senate appointments to tell them to vote on the right side of history, the side of democracy? The Honourable Minister for National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree with my colleague. Something important is happening in the Senate today. I would like to remind her, however, that now, under a Liberal government, the Senate is filled with independent senators. However, Conservative senators, they have to toe the party line. So I'd be curious to hear what they have been imposed. In any case, Mr. Speaker, you know that we have worked hard to transmit good information to senators, and we hope that they have understood how important supply management is for Canada and for Quebec. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.